Welcome to a new episode.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Copper Connection podcast. As always, I'm your host Chris Bailey, and if you're a plumbing apprentice or anyone working towards your technical qualifications in the trade, you're exactly in the right place. Today we're diving into something that might sound a bit old school at first, but trust me, understanding this will make you a better plumber. We're talking about central heating system principles. Specifically, those older gravity and semi-gravity systems that you may still encounter out in the field. Now, I know what you're thinking, Chris, why do I need to know about old systems? Aren't we all about modern tech? And you're right, we are. But here's the thing. As a tradesperson, you're going to walk into homes that were built decades ago. You need to understand what you're looking at, how it works, and why it was designed that way. Because when Mrs. Jones calls you out because her radiator isn't heating up properly and you walk in to find a one-pipe system from the 1970s, you need to know your stuff. And listen, with the exams on the horizon, now is the time to take this seriously and start revising. I know it can feel overwhelming, but breaking down these topics into bite-sized pieces is exactly how you're going to nail these exams. This episode is designed to help you understand central heating in a way that sticks. So when your exam day comes, you'll feel confident and prepared. So grab a notebook, get comfortable, and let's get into this week's episode. Alright, let's start with the basics. When we're talking about system principles in central heating, we're really talking about how water moves around the system to deliver heat. And there are two main ways this happens: gravity circulation and pump circulation. Think of gravity circulation like this. Imagine you're heating a pot of water on the stove. As the water at the bottom heats up, it becomes lighter and rises to the top, while the cool, heavier water sinks to the bottom. That's convection, and that's exactly how old gravity systems worked. The hot water would naturally rise through the pipes, circulate through the radiator, cool down, and then sink back into the boiler to be reheated. Simple, right? But here's the catch. Gravity systems were slow. They relied entirely on natural convection, which means the pipework had to be installed at specific angles, what we call the rise, to allow water to flow properly. No pump, no force, just physics doing its thing. Now, these systems aren't installed anymore, but, and this is important, you will come across them in older properties. So when you're doing your site assessments or working on maintenance jobs, you need to be able to recognise them. Fast forward to modern systems and almost everything uses pump circulation. Instead of relying on gravity alone, we installed a circulator or a pump that forces the water around the system. This means fast heating up times, better controls, and even more efficient heating overall. But here's where it gets interesting. Some systems combine both methods. These are called semi-gravity systems. For example, a C-plan system might have pumping heating circuits, but still use gravity for the hot water primary circuits. It's a hybrid approach that was common during the transition between old and new technologies. Now, let's talk about the one-pipe semi-gravity system. Picture this. You're called out to a house that was built in the 60s or 70s. The homeowner says the radiators furthest from the boiler are barely warm, but the ones closest are scorching hot. You take a look and you realise it's a one-pipe system. Here's how it works. There's a single pipe circuit that runs from the boiler, loops around the house and returns back to the boiler. The main ring is pumped, which is good, but each radiator has a flow and return stem that rely on gravity to heat it up. So the hot water flows through the first radiator, cools down a bit, then mixes back into the main ring, then it flows to the second radiator, cools down a bit more, and so on. By the time you get to the last radiator, the water is significantly cooler. That's why each radiator gets progressively colder as you move away from the boiler. It's a design flaw, but it was cheap to install back in the day because you only needed one ring pipe instead of separate flow and return pipes. The problem, well, it's inefficient, doesn't comply with building regulations Part L, and you can't control individual room temperatures. The boiler always tends to cycle on and off frequently, which wastes energy and shortens the boiler's lifespan. Let me tell you a quick story. Once I was working with an apprentice named Jake who was doing his level 2. He got sent to a job to balance a heating system. He spent hours adjusting lock seal valves on the radiator, trying to get them all to heat evenly. He was frustrated because no matter what he did, the last 2 radiators stayed cold. When I arrived to check on him, I took one look at the system and said, Jake, this is a one-pipe system. You can't balance it the way you're trying to. His face dropped. He'd been taught how to balance modern 2-type systems, but no one had explained that older systems work differently. That's why understanding these principles matters. It saves you time, saves your reputation, and helps you give honest advice to your customers. All right, let's talk about some critical safety components: the open vent pipe and the cold feed pipe. The open vent pipe is your safety valve. Its primary job is to provide an outlet if the system overheats. It allows the system to operate at atmospheric pressure, which keeps boiling point of water below 100 degrees C. And when you're filling the system or it's in operation, the open vent lets air escape. Here's the golden rule: never put a valve on an open vent pipe. I repeat, never. If someone closes that valve and the cold feed gets blocked, you could have a dangerous situation on your hand. Steam, pressure build-up, potential explosions, not good. The open vent should rise at least 450 mil above the water level in the feed and expansion system. This prevents something called pumping over, where the pump forces water up the vent pipe and into the system, causing an overflow. Now, the cold feed pipe works hand in hand with the open vent. It allows the system to be filled from the feed and expansion system, and it also accommodates expansion when water heats up. Here's a pro tip that'll make you sound like a seasoned plumber. The open vent and cold feed should be positioned on the flow from the boiler, on the suction side of the pump, with a maximum distance of 150 mil between them. This is called the neutral point. Why does this matter? Well, because the pump creates suction, and if the open vent and cold feed are positioned incorrectly, the pump acts on both with equal force. If they're too far apart, the neutral point weakens, and the pump will pull harder on one than the other, which can cause pumping over or air problems. It's the details like this that separate good plumbers from great ones. And trust me, questions about the neutral point and the positioning of all these pipes will come up in your exams. So make sure you've got this locked in. Let's talk about the feed and expansion system, or F&E system. This is typically an 18-litre black plastic tank that sits in the loft. It has 3 main jobs. Provide static head for the heating system. Basically, it creates pressure to push the water through the system. Keeps the system topped up after slight water loss from the expansion or small leaks. And accommodation for expansion, when the water heats up and expands. The F&E system should be located at least 1 metre above the circulator to ensure proper pressure. And remember, the cold feed from the system should not have any valves. You want that water to flow freely. When you're revising, make sure you can list the 3 functions. They're exam favourites, and understanding them will help you troubleshoot real-world problems on site. Now, let's move on to the 2-pipe semi-gravity system. This is a step up from the 1-pipe system. Instead of one ring where the flow and return water mix, you have separate pipes for flow and returns. This means water is forced into each radiator, and the flow and return waters don't mix until they get back to the boiler. The result, all the radiators reach the same temperature. Much better, right? In 2-pipe semi-gravity systems, you typically have gravity circulation for the hot water circuit, but pump circulation for the heating circuit. Sometimes there's a room thermostat that controls the pump, but the hot water often has no control and runs hotter. The advantage is all the heat emitters reach the same temperature, the system heats up quicker, and it's cheaper to run than a 1-pipe system. Disadvantage is still no proper temperature control, the boiler can cycle, and it doesn't comply with modern building regulations, part hell. These older boilers are also low efficiency compared to today's condensing boilers. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, because knowledge is power. When you understand how the older systems work, you can diagnose problems faster, explain issues clearly to customers, recommend appropriate upgrades, and avoid wasting time on fixes that won't work. And here's the thing, these systems are still out there. You're going to encounter them. And when you do, you'll be the plumber who knows what they're looking at, who can explain it confidently, and who can offer real solutions. That's what sets you apart. That's what builds your reputation. That's what turns you from an apprentice into a trusted tradesperson. And when it comes to your exams, this knowledge is going to give you the edge. You're not just memorizing facts, you're understanding the why behind the systems. And that's what gets you top marks and prepares you for a successful career. All right, that's it for today's episode of the Copper Connection podcast. I hope this deep dive into central heating system principles has given you some valuable insights. Whether you're studying your level 2 exam, out on site, or just curious about how these systems work, remember, every system you encounter is a learning opportunity. Don't be afraid to ask questions, take photos, and really understand what you're looking at. And with exams coming up, use episodes like this to reinforce what you're learning in class. Revision doesn't have to be boring. Make it active, make it engaging, make it stick. If you found this episode helpful, please follow the Copper Connection podcast on your favourite platform, whether that's Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening right now. And if you know another apprentice or student who could benefit from this, share it with them. Let's build a community of skilled, knowledgeable tradespeople together. I've been Chris Bailey, and I will catch you on the next episode. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making those connections.
We'll be back next week. In the meantime, please subscribe and thanks for listening.